Imagine turning the dial of an old radio late at night. You listen to the familiar wash of static, hunting for music, when the needle suddenly locks onto a patch of dead space at the far end of the dial. Through the heavy hiss, a solitary voice asks, "Can you hear me?" The origin of that voice sits on the edge of a small coastal town in California. It's an old, decaying broadcasting building known as Station 66.6 FM. Official records show that the station went bankrupt, cut its power lines, and completely ceased operations exactly 2 decades ago. Take a look at this chart of local transmission activity over the last 20 years. The baseline sits at absolute zero, confirming no active power. Yet, every night, a recurring spike breaks the flat line. Exactly at 2:13 a.m., the station broadcasts. This transmission functions like an anglerfish's lure in the deep ocean. It projects a specific, impossible frequency into the darkness, waiting for a listener to notice it, and more importantly, to engage with it. Dead air cannot logically speak. A severed line cannot produce waves. With no mechanical explanation, we must view the signal as a deliberate parasitic mechanism casting a net over the town to find a host. That host arrived in the form of a man named Ryan. Ryan was a professional audio engineer, someone whose career was built on capturing and isolating obscure radio signals. For a broadcast searching for a listener, his obsession made him the ideal target. The contact begins on a Tuesday night. Ryan is at his desk, scanning the airwaves with specialized receivers, when he locks on to the 66.6 FM frequency for the very first time. A voice struggles through the interference, offering a single warning: don't let them in. Ryan assumes he is hearing a prank, or perhaps a stray signal from a distant station. He ignores the warning, letting his curiosity override his professional caution. This diagram shows the signal's behavior during that first contact. It's a wide sweep, pushing scattered transmission waves across a broad grid of homes and cars. But 24 hours later, at 2:13 a.m., the signal changes. The voice returns, addressing Ryan by name. Instantly, the broad wave collapses into a single focused beam, locking onto one specific receiver mode. It is no longer searching. It has found a target. Driven by the need to find the source of the impossible signal, Ryan takes a mobile tracking unit into the field. He follows the strength of the frequency as it leads him away from the town and toward the coast. At 1:50 a.m., he reaches the source. The old coastal radio station is a shell of concrete and rusted rebar, isolated from the nearest neighbors. The front door is shattered, leaving the entrance wide open. Ryan enters the building, moving past piles of broken equipment until he reaches the central broadcasting room. Inside, he finds a single active microphone. Despite the building having no power, the on-air light is glowing a steady, vibrant red. As the clock hits 2:13 a.m., the room activates. Every inactive, disconnected speaker on the walls powers on at once, flooding the space with a wall of sound. From every direction, the voice speaks. You came. Ryan's arrival wasn't a discovery. It was the final stage of the reel. The signal successfully pulled its prey from a remote receiver directly into the physical heart of the station. The door locks behind him. In front of the microphone, a silhouette begins to form. It isn't a solid object, but a shape composed entirely of shifting, shimmering television static that radiates a localized, intense chill. The figure issues a single command: broadcast. Ryan tries to resist, but he loses control of his own muscles. He is physically forced toward the desk until he is standing inches away from the microphone. As he opens his mouth, his vocal cords are hijacked. He doesn't scream. Instead, he speaks a rhythmic, professional greeting. "Hello, listeners." The words are his, but the control belongs to the station. This extraction requires an immense amount of power,
Because the station has no electrical source, it must draw its energy directly from the host, beginning with the vocal cords, and the data required to mimic a human presence. The system uses the victim to sustain itself. It harvests the voice and the very presence of the host, integrating these biological traits into its own signal so it can continue to broadcast another night. The following morning, police enter the abandoned building and find Ryan's body in the broadcasting chair. There are no signs of a struggle and no obvious cause of death. However, the evidence photo on his ID badge reveals the true nature of the event. On the badge and on the body itself, the facial features have been wiped completely blank.
The skin is smooth, as if his eyes, nose, and mouth were never there. Station 66.6 FM is an entity with no identity of its own. It survives by stealing the physical and vocal traits of those it lures in, using the stolen data to refresh its signal and keep the station alive. That voice Ryan heard on his first night, the one begging him to not let them in, was the previous broadcast host. It was a warning from the person who stood in that same room before him, sent just before their own energy was completely depleted. The cycle continues tonight. At 2:13 a.m., the signal will go live again, and the new voice reading the broadcast will be Ryan's. If you are ever driving late at night and your radio dial lands on 66.6 FM, turn it off. If a voice reaches through the static and asks if you can hear it, stay silent. Answering completes the circuit and provides the station with the next host it needs to stay on the air.